Welcome to Ask the FM Doctor, an interactive web series brought to you by the Simplard Foundation and IFMA to help you navigate the complex and ever-changing world of facility management. Whether you're a seasoned professional or a newcomer to the field, you'll find valuable insights and tips to deliver a better experience for your stakeholders while saving money. Join us on the third Tuesday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern U.S. time to learn from our FM docs while connecting with other facility managers from around the world. Register today at simplerfoundation.org/FM-doctor so you don't miss an upcoming session.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here today. I hope you're doing well. The weather is warming up here anyways in Charlotte, and I hope everybody else is doing great. Today we're thrilled to be joined with Dr. Stephen Call, who's a professor at Washington State University, and he's going to be talking to us about corporate real estate, how that affects the facilities profession. So with that said, Steve, if you want to introduce yourself, and the floor is yours. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Dr. Smithwick. Appreciate it. Happy to be here to speak on a facility management topic that many of us focus on, which is corporate real estate. I'm hoping my screen is visible to everybody, so I will jump ahead here on my slide.
Steve, but again, share your slides if you don't mind.
Okay, let me do that. Let me redo that. Here we go.
Perfect. Looks great.
Awesome. Yeah. So a little bit about myself. As was mentioned, I'm a professor of facility and construction management at Washington State University. Started my career actually, spent almost 2 decades in the industry. I've started as a facility supervisor at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. Was a facility director for a medical center in Illinois, and also led corporate real estate, construction project management type programs within corporations, both nationally and multinationally. So I have a lot of experience in both kind of the operational side of facility management as well as the corporate real estate function in a kind of Fortune 500 type environment. And then my research at Washington State University is focused on facility management, facility operations, infrastructure. And so this is a great topic, I think, to touch on. Bachelor's degree in facility management and master's degree in real estate. So definitely some background and experience in this area. So I'd love to get questions as we move along. Part of the ask here was touching on touching on corporate real estate, which is a job function that is common with the facility management. You'll notice that primarily facility managers are focused on operational type tasks. This is from a global compensation survey that was recently produced by IFMA. And so, 75% of a traditional facility manager's job and role is really focusing on operational type roles. But you'll notice that there's also a little bit of real estate in there, a little bit of architectural engineering, as well as construction projects, which is understandable. So understanding, real estate and how that works is still an important thing to do. So today we're going to be talking about real estate, but I'm going to dive in to a specific topic. I don't want to just talk generally about corporate real estate, but a specific topic, and that's really the ability to understand the total cost of ownership for a facility, and how to forecast and predict that based off of asset values. So we'll be talking about some of the research I've been doing in that area. And so to kind of start things off, we'll be talking about linear regression for a bit, just to kind of give a quick tutorial on that, so there's some foundational understanding. A lot of what IFMA does, a lot of this data is coming from a lot of the research that's been done in benchmarking, cost benchmarking, space planning, O&M type work, which is a wonderful resource that IFMA provides. So what is regression? Well, regression, we say regression or linear regression, is really just understanding the relationship between two variables. And what it can do is it can actually produce a mathematical equation that can predict what values of one variable would be, or the y, for example, and how it's and the correlated or responding value of another variable. And so there's as an example here, here's a screen that's showing some hospitals. This is actually real data. This is coming from the state of Washington. The Department of Health actually requires all hospitals to provide their financial data every year to the state. So I just selected a few hospitals, their size, their square footage, and their utility costs. So the question is there a relationship between the size of the facility and ultimately what the utility costs are? So the square foot variable will be on the x-axis, and the utility cost variable will be on the y-axis. And so when we say correlation, we're really trying to say, is there a positive or a negative correlation? So if all those data points are following along a pretty linear sequence, we can say that they have a very it holds its ratio, negative or positive. If there's not a strong correlation at all, you'll notice like the box to the right, there's just data points everywhere. There's no linear relationship. Correlation coefficient, meaning if it's a perfect 1, right? So if I have 1 square foot, and it's always a relationship of 1 to 1 or 1 to 2, and it's always holding that, you're going to have a perfect correlation coefficient of 1. If it's weak, it'll be closer to 0. So here's a scatter plot based on the data I just showed between the costs and the square footage, and you'll notice that those points on the axis are following a very, very linear sequence. So you'll notice those. Hopefully you can see that, but the red dots, and then that line that the graph is created by. So we can see that, hey, there is a relationship just visually looking at that linear regression between the size of a hospital and its utility costs. So how do you do this? This is something you can do really easily on Excel. You just right-click, you highlight the table, you right-click on it, you create a plot graph, you select Format Trendline, and display the R-square value on the chart, and it gives you the linear, the correlation coefficient in essence. So the R-squared, or the correlation here, is 0.9, almost 0.98, which is a really, really strong correlation. So what is the relationship then between facility size and utility costs? Well, if we know this, then I can actually predict what the utility costs for other facilities out there, as long as I know its size, for example. So if I know the size of any hospital, because I have this linear regression that's showing me, hey, there's a really strong correlation between hospital size, facility size, and utility costs, I can create an equation that I can use to then forecast or predict what those costs would be. So it's the same process that I'm showing you, and so again, I'm kind of providing this information in case you want to go back and say, okay, how do I create this linear regression? Maybe it's a totally different type of variables. You just click Display Equation on the chart towards the bottom, and it actually produces an algebraic formula for you. So once you know that algebraic formula, you can plug in the numbers and say, okay, if hospital X is 475,000 square feet, just as an example, how much would I expect that they will pay in utility costs? Well, if I use that algebraic formula based on the linear regression that I just created, I plug in that 475,000, multiply that by the equation, I get 7.9x minus 605,430. What I get is about $3.2 million in utility costs. So I feel pretty confident about that because I know that it has a strong correlation between size and utility. So I can then forecast multiple facility types, as long as I know, generally, okay, are they in this certain, based on the data I'm using, are they similar type facilities? Are they similar areas? And I can have some confidence in my forecasting. So changing gears a little bit, but what we're finding, I was using size or square footage as my primary factor here to understand utility costs. But what we're actually finding, which is really, really valuable, and I'll explain why this is so valuable, is gross plant property and equipment. So this is a number on the balance sheet of your organization. It's really saying what is the value of the assets within my buildings, my equipment. What's the value of that? And that's a number that's on your balance sheet. So you don't need to go, add it up or try to figure it out. It's a pretty simple number that you can get from your financial statements, or just from your accountant, obviously. So gross PP&E values are proving to have actually the strongest correlation to facility expenses, regardless of size. So if you remember back to that that correlation coefficient, or that R squared, this is an example of some research that I did on again, hospital facilities in the state of Washington, but it can really translate, I think, in other organizations. These are the different variables that we looked at. So square footage was looked at, PP&E was looked at, as well as available beds and patient days, and some other common utilization metrics that are used in healthcare. And we compared that to plant operation expenses. So you'll see that no matter what metric you pick, it actually seems to have a decent correlation. So you can pretty much use any metric you want, whether you want to say, what's my cost per square foot, or what's my cost per admission, or what's my cost per bed, or PP&E. You're going to have some pretty strong confidence in making those predictions. However, when you look at smaller facilities, and this is under 100,000 square feet, you'll notice that those correlation coefficients actually drop quite a bit. And so all of a sudden you're saying, well, if I'm in a small hospital, square footage really isn't, it's moderately strong, but it's maybe not the best metric to use. If you look at patient days, for example, you'd say, well, I clearly would not want to use patient days, cost per patient day, because that has just no correlation to facility expenses. So what's great about this is that PP&E is still holding fairly strong to facility costs, which is wonderful. So no matter what size facility I have, if I know my plant property and equipment values, I can then predict my facility costs because I'm confident in that variable. So another way to think about that is it's not just the size of my facility that's driving my operating expenses. It's really the value of those assets that's driving my operating expenses. So I might have a smaller facility, but it's a data center, or it's a acute care, healthcare facility. And because of the value of the physical assets within that facility, even though the footprint is small, that's what's driving costs. Intuitively, it makes sense, but now we have some data and some research that's showing that that's actually the case. So how does this impact, as I mentioned from the beginning, how does this impact our ability to budget or forecast? Well, we can predict our facility operating expenses based on PP&E, based on square footage, whatever it might be. And then we can actually predict facility capital renewal costs as well. And then forecast total cost of ownership. So again, what is total cost of ownership? A really simple way to think about it is we have our initial cost. Let's say we're building a new facility. It's going to cost $10 million to build the facility. That's our upfront initial capital expense. And then we have our ongoing operations and maintenance, which is the recurring cost of owning that facility, as well as recurring capital renewal costs. So you have a mixture of capital and OpEx, and when you combine those together, you're able to understand your total cost of ownership. And to do that, you might say, well, that's the life of this facility is 30, 40, 50 years. And so now I can truly understand my initial capital costs, my ongoing maintenance costs into the future, as well as my recurring capital renewal expenses, and I can understand the total cost of ownership for my facilities. So an example of this is just a schedule, a cost schedule showing, okay, again, back to my assumption of a hospital, 475,000 square feet. I'm assuming construction is $600 a square foot. My operating costs are $20 a square foot. My capital renewal costs are $5 a square foot. And by the way, that capital renewal benchmarking cost came from a recent medical center benchmarking report that IFMA recently published. And again, decommissioning, redevelopment costs are excluded, but I'm assuming a 40-year lifespan. And now I can understand, hey, my total cost of ownership between my initial one-time capital investment, my operating expenses, my capital renewal, I'm somewhere in the tune of, $800 million over 40 years to own that facility. So the value that provides then for facility managers, for corporate real estate type focus is understanding the ability to communicate upfront what costs are going to be to a new facility, so that we can have the adequate budget and resources available to kind of maintain that facility in the future. So that's that's a short and sweet kind of description of some valuable resources and research that's available for corporate real estate and facility professionals to understand total cost of ownership, to make sure that we're managing our facilities as efficiently as possible. So I'd love to have any questions that anybody has. I think there's, let me check. I just noticed something come up in the chat feature.
Yeah, Steve, that was just me clarifying.
Great. Yeah, so that's, again, it's on the balance sheet. So PP&E, not personal protective equipment, but plant property and equipment is something you'll find on the balance sheet of your organization.
Thank you for joining us for today's session of Ask the FM Doctor. Be sure to mark your calendars now and join our next webinar at 12 p.m. Central Time on the third Tuesday of the month. We look forward to seeing you again.